Just one more step.
Ma'am. Please, ma'am.
Lord in heaven.
Ma'am, I won't be trouble long.
You're already trouble. Come in before you freeze into it. This'll want doing.
And it'll want doing tonight.
I know it.
What's your name? Silas.
Silas Reed.
Bite on this.
The man came out of the snow the way trouble comes to a way station, slow and on foot, and leaving a mark behind him in the white. Hannah Ault saw the mark before she saw the trouble, a dark stain on the trodden path to her door, spread to the size of a man's fist and kept on spreading, red going brown in the cold. Then she saw him, a tall shape leaning on the porch post, like the post was the only friend he had left in Dakota. His coat had been good once, his hat was gone, and when he lifted his face to the gold square of her window, it was quiet as a held breath, and just as cold. She should have barred the door. A widow alone, a boy asleep in the loft, a mortgage she couldn't feed, and a creditor who smelled it. A stranger bleeding on her step was one more thing she could not afford. But she had buried enough men to know the look of one who'd come looking for somewhere to die quiet, somewhere to stop. She opened the door. He didn't rush her. That was the first thing she'd remember later. A bleeding man might have fallen through the frame, might have begged. He only stood still, and he said, low, "Ma'am, I won't be trouble long." "You're already trouble," Hannah said. "Come in before you freeze into it." The Ault way station sat where the freight road bent north toward the Territory line, in a fold of grass and frost, 8 miles from anything with a name. Hannah had run it 4 years alone, since the fever took Thomas and left her a boy of 6 and a ledger that never once came out even. Riders stopped for a bunk and a plate of beans. She counted the coffee tin twice on Sundays. She had learned to make thin things last, and to feel her own loneliness like a draft under a door, always there, never spoken of. A shame she kept the way other women kept a chipped cup at the back of the shelf. She got the stranger into the chair by the stove and cut the coat away from his shoulder with the shears she used on chickens. A bullet, high on the left, still in him. The wound had closed dirty around it and gone hot. "This'll want doing," she said, "and it'll want doing tonight." "I know it." His breath came shallow. "You don't have to." "I know what I have to." She set the kettle on. "What's your name?" "Silas. Silas Reed." "Well, Silas Reed." She laid out the good needle, the whiskey she kept for medicine and never for herself, the flannel she'd wrung near gray with washing. "Bite on this." He bit. She worked with steady hands and a steady jaw. He didn't cry out, which cost him more than crying would have, and she felt every ounce of what it cost in the shaking of his jaw. When the bullet came free at last, it dropped into the tin basin with a small bright ring, like a coin paid over. She cleaned the wound and packed it and sewed it shut, and by then the sweat stood on him cold, and his eyes had gone somewhere far. "There," she said. "You'll keep." From the loft ladder, a small voice said, "Ma?" Eli, 7 now, in his nightshirt, hair every direction, eyes fixed on the stranger, the way children fix on the thing grown folks are trying to be calm about. "Go back up," Hannah said. "It's only a rider took sick." Eli didn't move. He studied the basin, the gray flannel, the man breathing hard in his father's chair. Then he looked at his mother, and whatever he saw in her face, he decided to trust, because he climbed back up without another word. That was Eli. He watched. He weighed. He'd been the man of a house since before he could reach the shelf, and it had made him quiet the way it makes some children quiet. Not empty, but full of things unsaid. Silas said, from far off, "Ma'am, I got money. Not much." "Sleep," Hannah told him. "You can insult me with money when you can sit up." He slept 2 days. She fed him broth off a spoon and thought, more than once, that she was feeding a corpse into keeping. On the third day, the fever broke, and she came in from the cold with an armload of stovewood to find him sitting up, gray-faced, trying to get his boots on. "Where do you think you're going? I've took your bed and your bread and I don't know how many days." He got one boot half on and had to stop, gone pale. "I don't stay places. It's better I don't stay places." Hannah set the wood down. She'd heard men run from a debt, from a wife, from a hangman. She'd never heard one run from staying itself, like it was the thing that could kill him. "You can't stand," she said. "Sit down before you fall down." I know." She handed him the bowl off the stove ledge, warm beans and a little pork fat. "Eat your stew." He looked at the bowl a long moment, like nobody had told him to eat in years. Then he ate. He meant to leave inside the week. He didn't. There was always one more thing that wanted a man's 2 hands, and Hannah's only made 2 of her own. The near colt had a habit of the halter. The well rope had frayed, and the barn door dragged on a busted hinge and hadn't shut true since October, and would ice in the frame the first hard night, and jam. Silas noticed it the way he noticed everything, sideways, saying nothing. Then one dawn Hannah woke to the rasp of a whetstone in the dark and found lamplight moving in the barn before she'd so much as stirred the coals, and the door hung true and swung silent, and he wouldn't meet her eye about it. "You didn't have to do that," she said. "Wanted a thing to do with my hands." He set the plane down. That's all. That was the closest he came, those first weeks, to telling her anything true. She learned the rest of him in pieces, the way you learn frozen ground, a little give at a time. He'd fought, somewhere south, and come home to nothing, and gone looking, and kept looking. 4 years of moving, because a moving man doesn't have to sit still with what he carries. She didn't ask what he carried. She knew the weight of a thing you didn't set down. She carried her own. Thomas in the ground, the ledger that wouldn't come even, the draft under the door of her own long solitude that she'd never once named to a living soul. And there was the trouble with the money, that she couldn't hide from him, because it came knocking. His name was Ransom Holt. He owned the freight interest and half the paper in the county, and wanted the other half. And Hannah's way station sat on the only good water for 11 miles, in the direction the rail survey was rumored to run. He came in a beaver fur coat with a ledger of his own, and a smile that had been practiced in a mirror. "Mrs. Ault." He didn't take the offered chair. Men like Holt stood so you'd feel the size of them. "Your note's past due. 60 days and it's been 90. I've paid every quarter, Mr. Holt. You hold the receipts. I hold the note." He set a paper on her table and turned it so she could read her own doom right side up. "I'm prepared to be generous. I'll take the land at fair value, and you'll walk away with something in your pocket. That's more than the bank would give you when the spring comes and you can't make the balloon. This is my home. It's a way station on water I need." He said it plain. The way a man says a thing he's decided is simply true. There's no unkindness in it. It's only how it is. Silas had come in quiet from the barn and stood by the wood box with his shoulders still stiff, saying nothing, being large. Holt looked him over, the mended coat, the way he held himself, and dismissed him as hired help. 90 days, Holt said. Then the balloon, and the bank, and I'll buy your paper off them for pennies and put you out in the mud. Or 30 days, and my price, and you keep your dignity. A woman alone ought to think hard on her dignity. When his sleigh had gone, Eli came down the ladder and stood looking at the door where Holt had been. "He wants our water," the boy said. "Not a question." "Grown folks' business," Hannah said. "I heard it." Eli looked at Silas, then at his mother, and his flat, small voice didn't waver. "If we lose the water, we lose the place. Eat your supper, Eli." He ate. But he watched Silas across the table, the whole meal, weighing, the way he weighed everything, and Silas watched the door. The snow came on a Thursday and didn't stop. It came sideways and then straight down, and then it stopped being weather and became a wall, white and close, and the road disappeared, and the barn was a shadow you had to rope your way to. No riders would come now. No riders would come till the thaw, which meant no coin in the tin, and 30 days of Holt's clock ticking under all that silence. They were snowbound. The three of them and the fire and the beans and the wide, wide quiet. The first night of it, Eli slept early, worn from helping haul feed, and Hannah and Silas sat up because the alternative was lying awake alone. She knitted. He honed a knife that didn't need it. The needles clicked. The wind pressed on the fixed door and found no gap to whistle through, and she was glad. In a small way, she'd have been ashamed to say that he'd mended it before the storm. "You never say why you keep moving," she said, to the yarn, not to him. The whetstone stopped. "4 winters back," Silas said after a long time. "I was supposed to be somewhere, a place I'd promised to be. I was late." He turned the knife over. "By the time I got there, it was over. All of it. And I've figured, since, that a man who can't be counted on to arrive has got no business staying anywhere. You stay, folks start to count on you. Then you fail them, because that's the one thing you know how to do. So you leave first. So I leave first." Hannah set the knitting down. The lamp threw his face half in gold and half in nothing, and frost had feathered up the window in ferns, and outside was 8 miles of white in every direction, and she had never in 4 years felt less alone. "My husband didn't leave me," she said. "The fever did that. But I'll tell you a thing I've never told, since you've told me yours." She smoothed the yarn flat. "I was lonely before he died, and I've been lonelier since. And the shame of it, a grown woman, a mother, a place to run and work to do. The shame of being lonely on top of it near broke me, more than the loneliness did." She looked up. "I've never said that out loud. Not once. Not to God on a Sunday." Silas looked at her the way, she thought, a man looks at something he'd decided long ago he wasn't allowed to want. "You're not a woman I'd call broken," he said. "No," she said. "I'm not." The fire settled. Neither of them moved to bank it. Somewhere near the middle of the night, his hand found hers on the arm of the chair, rough and careful, and she let it stay. And that was all. A held hand in the firelight. 2 people who'd been cold a long time, learning that a hand was a thing you could still be given. She thought, so this is what it is, to be seen. She'd forgotten, or maybe she'd never rightly known. In the morning, nothing was said about it, but he mended the loose rung on the loft ladder without being asked, and she put pork in the beans, and Eli looked between them once, sharp, and said nothing either, and the snow kept the world out, and the 3 of them warm, and 30 days from ruin. The thaw came, and the clock ran out, and Holt came to collect. He came on the 29th day, before the balloon, because a man like Holt likes to win before he has to fight for it. He came into the way station with 2 men and his beaver coat and his ledger, and he set the paper on the table again. "Time, Mrs. Ault. My price, or the bank. You've had your thinking." Hannah stood very straight. She had counted the tin. She had counted it twice. It was not enough, and it was never going to be enough, and she'd known that for weeks. "I can't make the balloon," she said. "You know I can't." "I do. Not cruel, just true. Sign, and keep something. That's the mercy in it." And Eli, by the ladder, said, "Don't." Everyone looked at the boy. He didn't flinch. He walked to Silas, to the drifter, not his mother, and he stood in front of him and looked up with that flat, weighing, unwavering face, and he said the thing that turned the whole story on its hinge. "You fix things," Eli said. "You fix the door. Fix this." A breath. "I'll wait on you." The room went quiet as the snow had been. 7 years old, staking the last of his trust on a man who ran from being counted on, and he'd said the one sentence that man had spent 4 winters outrunning. Not "I need you," not "save us." "I'll wait on you, as long as it takes, because you were worth the waiting." Silas looked at the boy for a long, long moment. Something moved through him that had nothing to do with the stiff shoulder. Some hinge, rusted 4 winters, dragging, and then swinging true. "There a town office holds the water rights on this creek?" he asked. Quiet, to Holt. Holt's smile thinned. "There is, recorded and legal." "Recorded," Silas said. "Then it's daylight and documents, and not this." He nodded at Holt's men, his voice never rising. "You want it settled? We'll settle it where folks can watch. Not here. with a widow and a boy and no witnesses. In the open. Tomorrow. Bring your paper. I'll bring mine. You've got no paper, Holt said. I've got a memory for a survey line, Silas said, and legs that'll walk to the county seat and back before you've had your breakfast. You claim her water feeds your rail. Let's read the record and see whose name the water answers to. In front of the whole town. It was not a threat. There was no gun in it, no fist. It was only a man saying, "At last, I will stand still, and I will tell the truth, and I will let it be seen," which is the one thing Holt had counted on nobody doing. The town of Cedar Fork gathered in front of the land office because word travels fast when it's about a widow and a rich man and water. Cora Mae Deverell was there first, of course. Cora Mae, who'd spent 4 years letting it be known that Hannah Ault kept a strange man out at her station. A woman alone. What did anyone expect? She stood at the front with her arms folded, and her verdict already delivered. Silas laid it out plain in the cold sun. The original survey, he'd walked through the night to the county seat and back, and the frost was still on his coat, recorded the creek's water rights to the Ault claim, granted with the homestead, senior by 11 years to any freight or rail interest Holt held. It was written down. It had always been written down. Holt had gambled that a tired widow would sign before anyone looked. The clerk read the record aloud. The record agreed. Holt stood in his beaver coat in front of the town he'd meant to own, and there was no fist to throw back. Only the daylight, and the document, and the plain red truth. And against those a man like him had nothing. He'd built his whole life on people not looking. Somebody had looked. He folded his ledger and he left, and the leaving was the loudest thing about him. And Cora Mae Deverell unfolded her arms. She crossed the frozen street to where Hannah stood, and the whole town watched a different kind of stand happen. A woman deciding, out loud, to be better than she'd been. "I've said things," Cora Mae said, "about you, out here alone." She looked at Silas, at the frost on him, at the boy holding Hannah's hand. "I was wrong to. A man that'll walk all night through the cold, to put the truth in front of folks, isn't a scandal. He's the kind you keep." She pressed Hannah's cold hands in her own. "You come to church Sunday. You come and sit up front, and let anybody with a word to say it to me." That was the town's conscience turning. Not a law, just people, deciding to see. Hannah kept her water, and her land, and her home. And on the road back, with Eli running ahead to tell the colt the news, Silas slowed and stopped, and for the first time since the snow she saw the running come back into him. The old habit, the getting ready to go. "You'll leave now," she said. Not accusing, just knowing. "It's what I do." He wouldn't look at her. "You're safe. Boy's safe. A man who runs oughtn't." "Silas." She stood in the mud with the thaw all around them, water running everywhere, going where it had always had the right to go. "You didn't fail to arrive this time. You walked all night and you arrived. You stood still and told the truth." She took a breath and spent the last of her shame on it. "You've been looking 4 years for somewhere to stop. It's right here, if you want it." He looked at her then, the whole long ache of him, out in the open at last, in the daylight, where a thing has to stand if it's going to be real. But he didn't answer that day. That was the truest thing about him. He wouldn't take a home the way another man takes a horse, on impulse, to have it. So he went. She let him. Eli said, when the shape of him was small on the road, "He'll come back." And Hannah said, "We'll see," and did not sleep well, and did not say so. He came back with the spring. She heard the wagon before she saw it, and she came out onto the porch, and Eli came out behind her. And there was Silas Reed with the mud sucking at the wheels and a load of milled lumber in the bed, and his hat, at last, on his head to take off. He climbed down. He stood at the bottom of the steps a moment, the way he had that first night, except there was no blood in the path now, only new grass coming green. "I fixed a lot of doors," he said, walking. "Couldn't stop thinking on yours." He looked up at her. "There's stew, ma'am. There's a bunk. I figured I'd say it to you the way you first said it to me, like a man who lives here. A breath, if you'll still have me." And Hannah Ault, who had counted her coffee tin twice on Sundays and fed a dying stranger off a spoon, and told the truth of her own long loneliness to a man in firelight. Hannah looked at him and felt the draft under the door of her heart close, at last, and warm. "I know," she said. "Eat your stew." He climbed the steps. Eli met him halfway and took his hand without a word. The way you take the hand of someone you decided long ago was worth the waiting. And there is a kind of home that is not a place at all, but the moment a person who has been moving his whole life finally lets himself stop, and finds, when he does, that someone kept the fire and left the door unbarred and was only ever waiting for him to come in out of the cold.